No one can learn everything there is to learn perfectly.
Right.
So there's going to be holes. And so my approach with it is, rather than shoving them through and having holes this big, we want to minimize the holes down to here. Get a real solid foundation before you launch them into more complex things. Mm-hmm. And what happens is they have more success that way because they're not struggling. Right. So, for instance, with the language lessons, if you throw a paper at them, they're not going to struggle with that because they have a really good foundation. They might have some holes in there, but the holes are going to be this big instead of this big.
Well, sometimes too, when we're new to homeschooling, especially with elementary students, we have the fear that if they're not memorizing everything we put in front of them, that we're failing. But right. The reality is, when you're younger, it's an awareness of a broader range of topics.
Yes.
And as you go through your academic career, you narrow it down to the niche.
And that's because it doesn't really do them any good to be able to identify it and not be able to use it in their writing. And that's what we're going for, is to write well. Before they have to write a whole paper, let's learn about writing interesting sentences. So maybe you want to do some read alouds. That's a fantastic way to approach it. But just read often and read things that the student is interested in. Mm-hmm. Read yourself. Let them see you reading. Both parents.
Hey everybody, good evening. Hope you're having a good evening. And so tonight I convinced Kristen, we have a little hideaway. So I convinced Kristen, hey, let's go on a date. Like, this would be a good date night if we go and hang out together. And so she agreed. And I said, well, let's do a live stream tonight. That's romantic. About language lessons for a living education. I mean, how much more romantic can you get than talking about language lessons for a living education? So that's what we're doing. We're going to talk about the program. Let me introduce ourselves in case you don't know who we are. My name is Randy Pratt. I am the Vice President of Sales and Marketing at New Leaf Publishing Group. This is Kristin Pratt. She is I never remember what you are. Content development editor. Curriculum development editor.
Or something like that.
Yeah. And so she is my wife. Did I say that?
Yes, you did.
Okay.
It'd be awkward if I wasn't, because you said this was a date.
Oh, yeah. I'm on a date with Kristen. There's not a no dating policy at the press. So anyways, we are we have the pleasure to work together. Kristen actually started working first with New Leaf Publishing Group, and then I came on. Mm-hmm. In fact, I think my son recently said, it's a good thing you have mom or you wouldn't even have a job. Right? Something like that.
Who said that?
Jamin did. We was talking about how lucky I was to have you.
But you had jobs before this
I know.
I don't know.
Well, nepotism. Anyways, we Kristen then has been writing language lessons for a living education, the entire series.
I'm a little distracted by the app because it looks like I've got a fancy hat in the app with your light directly behind me.
It does. I can't.
Looks like I'm wearing pineapples or something. That one's a little better.
You're gusset up for the evening.
Yeah, with my fancy hat.
Yeah. So, anyways, Kristen started writing language lessons for a living education 2 years ago.
I don't know, something like that.
Yeah, and it was quite a process. During it, you were diagnosed with breast cancer.
Yep.
Have gone through over a year of treatments.
Yep.
Right?
Yep. Still up to the end of July.
Yeah. And So it's been quite a journey. But you wrote 3 language lessons during treatment.
Yes.
Yeah. And we're happy to have her back. So let's talk a little bit about language lessons for a living education. I guess it's backwards in some or others, but anyways. So what inspired you? Like, what's the inspiration behind language lessons for a living education?
Well, when it fell to me to begin writing a language arts curriculum, I wasn't real excited about it because it's my least favorite subject to teach. And that's because I've never really found a curriculum that I loved wholeheartedly. So there was bits and pieces of different ones, and I've kind of adapted a lot of different curriculums through the years with my own students, kind of mixing and matching. So I just was never really gung-ho about any of the curriculums out there. When we ran support groups and when we had our own business, I would get questioned, what's your favorite? And I never could really say, ooh, I love this one. Mm-hmm. I would say, well, I really like this one for this, and I like this one for that. So the inspiration that I had was to create one that I would really love with my own students. And so that was really my inspiration. I found through the years, no matter what curriculum I used, there's the same pitfalls with kids. One of them is that no matter how many times they cover grammar, they forget it. They really don't grasp it fully until they're maybe 5th, 6th, 7th grade.
Yeah.
So the repetition, they do need that repetition. Trying to think of spelling. Spelling, they're just either born good at it or not. You can work to improve, but it's really hard to make a good speller out of someone that it just doesn't come naturally to.
Right.
The other thing is that so many curriculums push writing papers, and the kids are still struggling just to get a well-written sentence, a well-written paragraph. So I really didn't want to focus on writing papers until maybe 6th, 7th grade, because it's no good to have them writing papers if they can't write a well-written sentence and a well-written paragraph. Mm-hmm. Those are really crucial. And we have plenty of time in 7th, 8th, and high school to teach them how to write a paper. There's some kids that are going to love to write, and so those kids are just going to write naturally. They're going to create their own newsletters. They're going to take assignments and run with them. And so there's plenty of room there for a kid that loves to write. But for the kid who doesn't, it's really frustrating. And so I wanted to write a curriculum that the average kid is going to enjoy writing and learning how to write.
Yeah.
And so that was my inspiration. Really, just years of working with not only my own children, but talking with a whole lot of parents. I mean, I worked with thousands when we owned our own curriculum business. We sold all sorts of curriculum.
So let me pause there.
Yes.
Okay, so anybody who doesn't know our story, we have 9 children. We've graduated 5. Mm-hmm. We have 5 still in the nest and homeschooling them. We have 4.
We have 9 children.
Okay, I counted myself.
5.
I counted myself.
That leaves 4
4 children still in the nest.
Little math.
Yeah, I didn't teach math. We've known that for a lot of years. So we have, and then we've been homeschooling for over 25 years.
Yes.
And
I don't know, ish. It's over 20 anyway.
So, yeah, it's over 25. Well, it's pretty close.
Close to 25.
Yeah.
I don't know. Anyway, more math. It's too late in the day for math.
Yeah. And we've helped, we owned a company that sold homeschool curriculum we owned it for 10 years, mm-hmm. sold it to Christian Book Distributors in 2010. But in that company, we sold most of the major curriculums.
Yes.
So we've supported, we've marketed, merchandised, we've touched and used.
Yeah, and we've led a support group too.
Right. Plus,
we were co-leaders for years, and then we were the leaders for years.
And we've helped literally thousands of families kind of transition into the homeschooling and then beyond.
Yes.
And you learn from that what works, what doesn't work.
Correct.
And there's a common sense approach. And sometimes with master books, a lot of curriculums are designed for a classroom, or they're designed without a lot of experience behind them. And one thing I'll say about with your involvement in the curriculum development is you've graduated children. You know what it takes. You see the end game. So when you're writing a first grade curriculum, you know what 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, what high school, what a career looks like.
Right.
And I think that's the beauty of the system is it's actually, you kind of see the big picture first and then work from there.
Yeah, I would kind of liken it to a bucket. We're going to dump a whole lot of stuff into that bucket.
Yeah.
And what we're doing in the lower grades is we're solidifying that bucket. We're reducing the number of holes. I mean, you're going to have holes because it's just, no one can learn everything there is to learn perfectly.
Right.
So there's going to be holes. And so my approach with it is rather than shoving them through and having holes this big, we want to minimize the holes down to here. Get a real solid foundation before you launch them into more complex things. Mm-hmm. And what happens is they have more success that way because they're not struggling. Right. So, for instance, with the language lessons, if you throw a paper at them, they're not going to struggle with that because they have a really good foundation. They might have some holes in there, but the holes are going to be this big instead of this big.
Well, sometimes too, when we're new to homeschooling, especially with elementary students, we have the fear that if they're not memorizing everything we put in front of them, that we're failing. But right. The reality is when you're younger, it's an awareness of a broader range of topics.
Yes.
And as you go through your academic career, you narrow it down to the niche. Right. So we're learning big topics and big skills and foundations out in the early grades. By the time they're in college, they might have a major in, British literature or American lit, or they may narrow it down considerably, journalism, those types of things. So, so with that, let's talk a little bit about placement into the system, and then we're going to go through and talk about the individual levels. But one of the things that I get frustrated with in marketing, so if you tell other people about master books, be sure to tell them master books is a little bit different in that we're outside the box and we don't really give a lot of merit to grades.
Right.
Grades by like first grade, second grade, like that. We look at more skills.
Right. My approach is if you have a bookshelf of books, you're not going to arrange them by kindergarten, first grade, second grade, third grade. You're going to arrange them, the younger books together, your readers together, your lower readers, your upper readers. Mm-hmm. It's going to be grouped a little, or topically. You might have your history books, you might have, your science books, that sort of thing. But you're not going to be super rigid and assign grade levels to those books. And so they're just going to gradually work their way up. And so it's the same with curriculum. This idea of grade levels is really a recent phenomenon, even though it's all we've ever known in our lifetimes. As far as history goes, it's very artificial. It's an artificial stair step instead of a gradual incline. And the stair step is just so, just wrong. It's artificial. It doesn't follow the exact path that right. every student takes. But we are stuck with the mentality of it, and it just doesn't match the reality of how a child learns.
Well, especially difficult in early grades.
Yes.
Because children developmentally, and we've talked about it before
right.
in our lives, developmentally, there's a lifetime of difference between 2 4-year-olds.
Yes. Yes. And that's why it's important when you're placing your student into the curriculum to make sure that they're placed in the right spot. And it shouldn't be based on what curriculum they've already used. It shouldn't be based on what grade level they're in. It should be based on their abilities and where they're actually at.
And they find a placement test by going, if you go to Language Lessons for a Living Education, you can go into the products, and in the products there's actually a place, it's more of a readiness test or a guide. It's
not a test, it's just a guide.
A guide.
Eventually we do plan on doing a test, but that will be when the Language Lessons Teaching Companion comes out, which I've started a list of topics. That's as far as I've gotten. It's going to be a while before that's ready.
Okay, so take the test.
Right, and I would like to say about the guide, base it on the student's writing ability, not on the student's reading ability. One thing that we get a lot of requests for is they want us to assign books, and there's a reason why I do not have assigned books. Now, there are some books that go with them, with the levels, but they're not specifically, for the most part, except for level 1, designed to really help the student learn to read. It's more of a companion book. It's part of the student reading and their comprehension. But you'll notice that throughout the course, there's reminders to assign books. In the back of the book, there's a really nice worksheet that you can pull out, and you can either keep it for yourself or give it to your student or make a copy for both of you. And that's to track the book. So you could use it as a place to record the books you want your student to read, or as a place to record books your student has read. And the reason that I do not believe in assigning books is, number one, I have a very different standard for books that my students read than anybody else that I know.
Right.
And when I've been a part of support groups, we've actually had issues because some think this book series is okay, but others think it's not. And then fights break out, and it just gets really ugly quickly. Even among conservative Christians, there can be different standards of what they want their children reading. So there's that issue right there. You need to be in charge of what content your children have before you. And I think that that's really important for parents to know what their children are reading. There's also differences between children in how they absorb different books. We had one child in particular that if there was a particularly bratty child, no matter, even if it was to show what not to do, she would take on some of those things. And so we had to be careful about what book she read, even really good, well-written, clean books from a Christian perspective.
Yeah.
So, those types of books were not good for her. So we had to be really careful in certain ages of what we exposed her to. And then there's the reading comprehension levels that you have to take into consideration. So when you combine all of that, you can begin to understand that for me to create a list of books your student should be reading is pretty daunting, because there's not going to be any right list.
Yeah.
So that's one part of it. Another side of that is that our staff does not have the time right now to preview lots of books out there. And so we only will recommend master book titles. And that's because we just don't have the time right now to preview books. And we're not going to recommend books that we haven't personally vetted as a company. So there's that issue. So you can see all these issues are stacking up.
Okay, so most of the issues you gave would be consistent with kind of a mom philosophy.
Yes.
The content, influence on children, all of that.
Right.
Let me give a dad philosophy, okay?
Go for it.
Stop trying to cram things down kids' throats that they hate to do. So, if my kid has to read American Girl books, my boys would about die.
Yes.
But if they can read something about adventure or hunting and fishing, my goodness, they consume every book we can put in front of them about boy things, right?
Yes.
If we create a book list that we want, then we lose that part of partnership.
But you know what? We have one boy who doesn't want to read about hunting, fishing, and all of that.
Exactly. So,
you know?
so the thing that we're learning as parents, now we've been parenting for a while, okay? How long?
30 years.
30 years. I got to be careful. I want to make sure I always say the right time. It's 30 years.
Almost.
Yeah, we've been married 31 years.
30 years in July.
31 years we've been married, and we've been parenting for 30 years. We've come across something with one of our sons that him having a say in his life, like being able to choose A or B, motivates him incredibly. Mm-hmm. And I think sometimes we can actually allow our kids to be partners in their education and say, let's go find some books or a series that you enjoy reading, and I'll support you in that.
Yes.
Because when we've done that, when I go to a convention with the boys and I say, hey, let's go find some books, and they read them, they like consume them versus an assigned book list in a literature program.
How I personally do it is, my personal philosophy is I let my boys, right now I just have boys, so I'll refer to my boys. I let my boys go and pick out a handful of books. And sometimes they'll say, well, I want to read, 6 books out of this series. Well, this series is kind of what I call junk reading. It's not bad. It's goofy. It's, it's not really a higher level. And so what I do is I'll say, okay, you can choose 2 books from that grouping, but then I want you to choose 4 out of the other books. And so that way they're getting a mixture.
It's like you can have dessert if you eat your food.
Yes. And the other thing that I really don't like to do is I do not like to have to give tons of questions and assignments with their books. So, for instance, okay, we've got 2 books that are assigned with the series. We have these 2. In this one, there's some comprehension questions in there that go along with that day's reading. That's enough for me. Nothing has killed my kids, my older kids, joy of reading more than having to answer questions about the book. Mm-hmm. Like specific things, like, what time did Johnny go to the store, and what breed of dog did he bring home? Just those specific questions. I'm not saying you can't go, you can do those sort of things if that works for you, but I have found for my own children that it kills their love for reading.
Well, it goes against brain science.
Go for it.
Well, the brain science is if I focus on something specific, like there's actually, I was going to talk a little bit more about this in teaching tips, but they've done studies where they tell people to focus on a bouncing ball, and people do, and then they'll have somebody come through in a gorilla suit and do jumping jacks and then walk off, and nobody will even notice it.
Right.
So when we're so focused on looking for the answers, we completely miss the whole of the story.
Yeah, I find that it's much better just to say, hey, did you like that book? What was it about? What did you like about it? Yeah, just showing an interest, just having a conversation. What did you like about it? Was there anything you didn't like about it?
Yeah.
What was your favorite part? Why did you like that character?
Yeah.
That sort of thing. And so I believe in more of a narration approach, but probably even more relaxed than that. Just allowing the children to enjoy reading. Mm-hmm. That's more my personal approach. And so, I don't want to tell you as a parent what's right for your child when I've never met your child. I don't know their strengths, weaknesses. I don't know their interests. And I don't know your particular standards for books. And so I want to put that in your hands. And so there's reminders to assign reading, because what's going to help a student read better? Reading. And so maybe you want to do some read alouds. That's a fantastic way to approach it. But just read often, and read things that the student is interested in. Mm-hmm. Read yourself. Let them see you reading. Both parents. it's a great idea to let them see you reading and enjoying books, doing family read alouds,
Right.
and then letting them pick out books that they're interested on their level. And it's okay to let them read goofy books. Like our kids, one of their favorites when they were younger, and I don't know about new and current ones. I only know about this series, the specific books that we had. I never saw anything ugly or non-biblical. So I say this with that disclaimer. Please don't run out and say, "Oh my goodness, this is in it," because who knows nowadays.
Put up the disclaimer.
Yeah, we'll put up the disclaimer.
Of Kristen Pratt do
Yes.
not necessarily
I don't know
represent
what's
views
in
and opinions
anything
of the
currently.
publishing group.
Anything currently available. Anyway, we loved Amelia Bedelia, and Amelia Bedelia was it's a series of just silliness. It's about a maid or someone, and she would take everything serious. She worked for this couple, and she would do literally everything that was said, and so all sorts of goofy mishaps. And I've passed those books down to my grandkids, and my grandkids now are loving as they're learning to read. So those are what I would say I would call them junk books, but they're books that are fun and draw the kids in, but they're not weighty and meaty. And we do want them to read some more weighty and meaty things.
Yeah.
But, lure them in with some of those fun titles.
One thing
My
that I
phone
would
is going off. My daughter-in-law is calling.
One thing that I would say about master books is we try to keep it so that you have the basics, the foundational, and you can add as much as you want. But we're not going to give you a book with you've got to read this. Now we're actually changing some of the books because our high school literature can be overwhelming to people. Mm-hmm. But especially in the lower grades, like with what you've done, it's here's a foundation, add to it as much as you want, thicken it up with books that they would enjoy and that type of thing.
Right. And another issue with me assigning books is kids read at different speeds.
Right.
And so I also want to give you as the parent the flexibility to say, okay, I want you to read a chapter a day or a chapter a week, depending on the book.
Yeah. Okay, so we're talking about reading, so
Yes.
that's a perfect segue into Foundation Phonics.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the beginning of the series is really the Foundation Phonics book
Along with?
that transitions from Foundation Phonics into level 1.
Yes.
When would a student start just this book?
We recommend first grade, that the first half of first grade you do Foundations Phonics, the second half you do the language lessons level 1.
Okay.
However, if a student is ready in kindergarten, you could spread that out for a full year and spread your language lessons out for a year.
What will stepping stones prepare in not stepping stones, Simply K, kindergarten, what will that prepare a student for with this?
Well, Carrie Bailey recommends that you don't start that until after you get through a certain number of
I
lessons.
think it's at least lesson 26, but I think that's if you're pushing.
Okay. So Simply K introduces your basic letter,
Sounds, shapes.
writing it, recognition.
Okay.
And then Foundation Phonics is going to introduce the sounds, the blends, the actual reading.
Okay. Now we recommend starting in first grade with reading. Mm-hmm. Why?
Because it's developmentally more appropriate. Some kids are ready to start reading. Many kids are not.
Okay, so with some kids start reading at 6. Should a parent be panicked if a child is 7 and just beginning to learn to read?
No, usually those students just kind of take off when they do. Some may struggle. We've had a couple of students struggle to read until about 4th grade and then took right off. And there's not been like a long-term issue.
Right.
They were just a little slower to get started. One of my sons that was a little slower to get started, words have not been his strong point, but in spelling and all of that, it's just not his strong point. He's very good at communicating, but some of the details, vocabulary, he has to ask, what does this word mean? What does this word mean? What does this word mean? And so I just let him always ask. I'd rather him ask what it means, and he's growing by leaps and bounds. So I've yet to have a student start off slow that it's ended up in high school where they're not able to achieve. They have caught up and are doing just fine.
After lesson 23 of Simply K is the official Master Books answer. Okay.
Thank you, Master Books.
So let's talk, let's go through the series. Language Lessons 1. This Foundation Phonics is 5 days a week.
Yes.
1 semester.
Yes.
Language Lessons for a Living Education is 3 days a week.
I think so.
It is 3 days a week.
Well, it depends on which
Well, there's
schedule.
a 1 semester schedule.
That's 5 days a week.
So if you do it the second half of the year, it's 5 days a week. If you spread this out for a full year,
it's 3 days a week.
And
I would suggest, especially if you spread it out over the whole year, that you increase the amount of reading. So on those off days that you do more reading and do some more games that are in the back of the book.
So there's a daily schedule. On day 1, you focus on children's book, poem, picture, study, or Bible verse. Days 2 and 3, you do phonics reviews, new words, letter combination, writing practice, or simple grammar concepts. Day 4, review grammar concepts, more phonics and fun with simple spelling and words. And day 5, word list for creating your own dictionary.
Right.
Cover the own dictionary thing, because sometimes that can kind of stump people.
Yes. So in the back, especially in the lower grades, you're just going to have them draw a picture, write the word, and a super simple definition. They don't even have to write a definition if they're not able to do that. You can write it for them, but it should be very, very simple. If they're getting frustrated because there's too many words, don't do them all. Start off with doing 1 a week and gradually build up the stamina and the interest in it. I personally have been surprised by how many kids actually love it when the parent thinks they're going to hate it.
Right.
But for some, there's too many words, and for some, they're going to plow through it because they love it. So if your student is really struggling with it, then pull back. Only do 1 or 2 of the words, or do half of the words, or whatever's at their ability level.
Okay, so this book, there's 3 books that are required to go alongside this. I know we sell them as a set with all 4 books, or you can buy just the individual, the teacher guide. The 3 books are not too small at all.
This one is so sweet and so adorable.
Is it the Door of Salvation?
No, that one's last. Then there's
the Charlie and Triet Grand Canyon
this
Adventure.
One's fun because it has a little extra.
There's pop-ups and stuff like that in it.
And if you ever get a chance to visit the Grand Canyon, it's even better. So there's different extra things in this one. And then at the end, they're going to read this as just a confidence building, fun kind of thing, to have them read it themselves at the end of the course. And it's also got fun pop-ups.
And it has a message of salvation in it.
Yep. And so if your student struggles at all with reading any of this, just jump in there and help them out. Make it fun. And that's the whole key, really, is making it fun in these early developmental years where they're learning to read. You can jump in there and help them sound out the words, or read it for them the first few times that they encounter a new word. Just practice and show them how to do it, and tell them what a great job they're doing.
So the Make Your Own Dictionary, there's for each letter.
Yeah, you're going to draw a picture. You're going to write the word and just write a very brief, it could just be 1 word.
And some kids don't enjoy it?
Some kids don't enjoy it because there's too many.
But then other kids start actually looking for words to create.
Yes.
Sometimes people are
They
surprised.
go above and beyond.
Yeah.
And so I would say if it's something that your kid is just, no matter what you've tried with it, don't do it. But it is a really good vocabulary building, and so I would at least do that part of it. I would at least go through each of the words and say, what does this word mean?
Yeah.
And talk about the definition at the very least. But the vast majority of responses that we get is positive.
Okay, level 2. Now, level 2 has a daily schedule, a cadence, if you will, through the year.
Yes.
So the first day of the week, or day 1, you're a special feature of a short story. Weeks in between alternate between picture studies, reading a poem or psalm. We love to read the psalms that the kids put together.
Those are my favorite. I love to read. Well, I love to read everything that you all post showing your kids' work. There are times when I'm just not feeling well, and so I'm not able to get in there and see everything. And sometimes I'm able to see it, but I'm just not feeling well enough to post. But I love to scroll back and just see everything that they're doing.
Day 2 and 3, learn about writing topics such as grammar, punctuation. Day 4, create a story, poem, psalm. Day 5, focus on spelling and vocabulary. It incorporates picture study, memorization, grammar, punctuation, spelling, vocabulary, observation, poems, psalms, letters, application through creating their own stories from pictures and sentence.
Right. And can I just say something about that part of it? One thing that doesn't make sense to me is learning grammar, punctuation, and all of that and not applying it. I've seen courses where they learn all this stuff, but they don't actually apply it to their writing.
Oh my goodness, yes.
And so that's really important to me, that they actually apply. So there's a lot of assignments where they'll say learn about nouns, and then they're going to write a sentence using a noun. And that's because it doesn't really do them any good to be able to identify it and not be able to use it in their writing. And that's what we're going for, is to write well. Before they have to write a whole paper, let's learn about writing interesting sentences using a variety of nouns, adjectives, adverbs, that sort of thing. To make, not only to know how to use a capital letter, use proper punctuation, but how do we make our writing better?
Okay, so I agree. Application is important. When you look at the education hierarchy, there's base level learning. It's very easy to create a curriculum that you don't have to be very involved with. It's, at times, you were homeschooling 6 kids. You were running a business while I was on the road.
Yes.
Then we were doing ministry all weekend. How, from a time management standpoint, because math and language, those are the 2 hardest, I think, for homeschoolers. Sometimes science in high school, but those are the 2 that require the most from mom. Time management wise, when you created this, like, what is your thought? How does that work? Because we know some courses, mom is going to be there grading papers considerable amount.
It depends on the year you're having. This year, my kids did their work, but nobody looked at it except here and there. And so, they had to do a lot on their own. Generally speaking, though, I plan to be much more involved with, like you said, math and language arts. And so from a time management, it's setting, aside that time to read what they're writing and to offer encouragement on how to write better. And so that you have to be, I like to have independent curriculum as much as possible, but I'm still responsible for their education. So it can't go without any involvement from me. So I set up a lot of systems so they know what they're supposed to be doing, when they're supposed to be doing it, so that that's not what I have to focus on.
Right.
So I'm focusing on the important things. And anywhere that I can, for instance, my son, my one son, I know he struggles a little bit in math, and I knew that principles of mathematics was going to be a little bit more of a challenge for him. He's also, I mean, he's a very smart kid with anything to do that he's doing with his hands. But he's a little, he's not as interested in math and English.
Right.
And so
He's going to be a great salesman.
he's a phenomenal salesman. So with him, we got Kate Luke's math course. And so when he needs help with that, with his math, we turn to that. And so I put in as many support things into place as possible. I have dictionaries and thesauruses on the shelf. They know where they are. They have access to them. Just all those sorts of things are at the ready for them.
So the Master Books Academy, one of the reasons that we're doing that is a common sense approach. We know that sometimes moms need just somebody to come alongside them, provide that extra assistance.
Right.
And I think it's happening more where our lives are just busy and full, and we get that. And so we want to help create products and supplements that help make homeschooling more effective, right?
Yes.
I would say, as advice to homeschoolers, we've been at this long enough to say this, there are seasons where you just have to give yourself permission to say, we are going to survive this season.
Yes.
And we're not going to beat ourselves up over this because this is life. And the whole family is gonna sacrifice a little bit. And then there are seasons where it's like, okay, we've come out of that season. Mm-hmm. That was a bit of a winter season or a rough season,
Right.
a planting season. Now we're moving into summer, and we're going to have to reset and kind of come back together, regroup, and bring it on. I don't think we want to make excuses for poor homeschooling.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, if we commit to homeschooling, we need to commit to homeschooling, and we need to be good at it. But we also need to be able to give ourselves permission to say a baby year. Mm-hmm. Like for us, a baby year meant it was going to no sleep and just a lot of demands and sacrifice on the family. Right. But then we found systems to come through that. And a lot of this is designed for a student to at least go work on that while I'm nursing the baby.
Right.
Or go do this, and then we'll look at it afterwards, and then you can kind of keep the plate spinning, if you will, for a busy homeschool mom.
Right.
Okay. Did I read 3?
And can I just... All of the books follow a certain order, and I just want to point out a few features. One of the things that we have in the beginning of each of the levels is a section called About This Course, and it breaks down the different, there's a general overall about it, and then there's teaching helps. Those two sections are very important. The teaching helps show the different sections of the course, and so I highly recommend that you read it and reference back to this, especially when you're first starting in the course, to help get your bearings as to the what's and the whys behind what they're going to be doing.
Right.
And so, like, create your own dictionary. There's some good tips in there about that. For fun, there are different activities in there, and if you didn't know better, if you didn't read this, you might not realize that those are just extras. So if your student doesn't grasp it, that's okay. It was just meant for something fun and extra. And it talks about the assessments. I personally don't like testing in language arts through the elementary years, but I also know some states require it. So what we do is we provide you with a review at the end of the quarters. The level 2 just has extra quizzes in the back. Levels 3 and up has reviews at the end of every quarter. I highly recommend you do those open book and let them refer to the grammar study sheets in the back.
Okay. So when parent says, my child isn't memorizing anything, for you, the goal wasn't to memorize, and it was more familiarize.
No, and the reason that I don't stress memorizing it is because I would say the vast number of kids that do well on the testing, it doesn't stick with them. They memorize it, can pass the test, and can rattle it off in the short term, but it never makes it to the long term, and they're not using it. They lose it. And so I'm more interested in them working with the concepts and actually writing than I am them being able to memorize. And I also want to put them into the habit of looking into the back to look things up, because in our society, that's what we do when we don't know something.
Right.
So if I've forgotten something, if I can't remember how to spell a word, I'll start typing it just to see what my autocorrect does.
But we also learn through that.
And then I try to pay attention to it.
Yeah.
So at the beginning of all of the Master Books courses, we do the schedule, and we have you can assign dates to it. You can use it in a variety of ways. We have it broken down for you, so if you want to just check it off as you go, you can, or you can break it out into a schedule. In fact, because Master Books has made it so easy, I've switched over to Master Books in almost everything. There's a few little extra courses here and there that are not Master Books because Master Books just doesn't have those things. And that's because, I mean, I'm a mom first, but we've just come out with so many fantastic courses, and the daily schedule has just made it's transformed my homeschool. And so this year I'm going to rethink my prep work and how I do some of my paperwork now, to adjust it, just because this daily schedule makes it so easy.
Right.
So the first day, in the lower levels, you're going to see highlighted sentences. Those are sentences that I suggest you have your student read to you. Now, if your student is a phenomenal reader, they can read the whole thing to you if you want. But if they're struggling, then I suggest that you just start off with the highlighted, or if they're just average. You can always add or subtract or help them through it if they need the extra help. But that's just a guideline so that it gives you a starting place and you don't have to go through the curriculum trying to find sentences for them to read. I am a huge fan of co-reading, and I've never seen that implemented in curriculum. But that's something that I've done with my own students. And they love to read a book with me or a passage with me. And so to co-read just draws the student in. It's something you can do together. And so I just really highly suggest that, even outside of the curriculum, to co-read with your student. There's nothing like co-reading to see the areas that they need a little bit of encouragement in. Maybe it's the ed endings of words, or ing, or maybe it's where ph is used, or there's a silent letter. Fantastic way to shore up those things with reading. And those are, like you said, with time management, those are the areas that I want to step in and actually spend the time with the student. And that's why I like to get my year very organized and have them do as much independent as possible, so that I can take my time doing co-reading and things like that. There are questions that you can ask, or you can just have them narrate. The questions are just to kind of train the student's brain to pay attention to what they're reading. But you could just simply ask them to narrate back to you what the story was about.
Yeah.
So when it's not a story, sometimes it's a picture study on that first day. If it's not a picture study, let's see here. Sometimes it's a psalm. And then sometimes it is a poem, which I can't find one right off the bat. So that's the flow. There's a definite pattern as you go through the course, but there's also variety. because as a parent, I get bored of the same exact thing.
Well, and it's more holistic too, because it ties into different parts of the brain.
Yes.
Different ways for the student's brain to have to think, and it develops critical thinking.
Yes.
So even copy work, one of the things that bothers me, and sometimes people will complain about copy work and think it's pointless. It's not. Copy work actually teaches like memorization skills, because for me to be able to look at something, look at a word, and go, memorize the word, go back over, write it out, and go through the manual part of that, I'm training my brain for recall.
Right.
And
there's regular copy work. Day 4 is your copy work day. And you're going to read, it says read pages 42 to 43 of the 101. You're going to use this for levels 3 and 4. And so you're...
2, 3, and 4, isn't it? Or just, is it 3, 4? Okay. 3,
4, 4 and 5.
Yep, okay.
So you're going to read those things. You're going to answer the questions, which is just reading comprehension questions. And then they're going to copy the verse out of there, and they're going to copy the caption. And one of the things that they're going to do is draw the picture. Now, that's another area that some students really don't enjoy. And so some love it. The artistic kids love it. The kids that are not artistic and also tend to be perfectionists are the ones that struggle the most with it. And I have one of those kids. And so what I started to do is I let him pick one element and do that. There was another one, I wish I had brought a sample of it, or an idea, another family that had a really good idea in the group, and I can't remember who it was. If you're listening, chime in. But she showed, what she did is she just cut a square out, and then they just picked a spot to put that square, and that's what they worked to draw. And what I've done is I have encouraged my son in saying, listen, I'm not good at drawing either, but I'm never going to improve at it if I don't do it. And we can find joy in doing things that we're not perfect at. And so it's a really good exercise to teaching our kids to persevere at something that isn't in their gifting, because we're all going to have to do that at some point. And we're going to lose out on some fun things if we can't stretch ourselves outside of the things we're not good at. And so, I'll draw a picture just to show how not good I am at drawing. And then my artistic son, he's gotten used to accolades, and he got to one of these and he's like, Mom, I can't draw this. Well, I knew full well he could draw it. And so I knew it was a little bit of a pride issue. And so so we had the talk, and I said, listen, you don't have to be good at everything you draw. We know you're good at drawing. Mm-hmm. And so I encouraged him, and then he's like, oh, but it's going to take too much time. So I said, really? I said, I'm not good at drawing, but I sat down and I drew it. And I said, that didn't take me long at all. And I'm terrible at drawing. You're much better than I am. And so we just kind of stripped away the struggles and had the discussion, and he went on to be fine.
Another very creative way for some kids was the Legos.
Yes.
Where they did a Lego creation. You could even do like Play-Doh or clay, just some artistic representation or recreation of it. Yes,
and what creating it does is it really draws them into the details. It's studying details, and all of that is going into their mind. And then when they're actually writing, they're more inclined to be able to think with details, write with details, and have things to draw from.
Okay, so we as we always do, we go long. So I'm going to move to the end of the series. Mm-hmm. Okay. Here they're using grammar skills, applying it.
Right.
What? Because I've got a follow up, so we've got to kind of go through this a little bit quickly. But what should a student? What will they be doing?
Well, they're going to start writing some simple papers. They're still going to be honing their paragraphs, but they're going to be learning about different types of paragraphs. They're getting a little bit more into, like I just saw one of the pages you flipped to, couplets and personification. They're learning about different styles of writing, different types of writing. They're starting in levels 5 and 6. They're jumping into more rules with spelling. They're doing just a lot more application, getting a little bit deeper into those things.
And you have stuff for book reports, stuff like that.
Yeah, and one thing that's really, really, really important that we haven't even discussed is in the back of the book of all these levels, there's a wealth. There's just so much in here. There's games. Okay, so I have level 4 here, Slapjack. Very simple game. And it gives instruction on how to play a slapjack game using nouns, possessive nouns, proper nouns, pronouns. And it also helps with visual processing. So if your student is struggling with nouns, look in the back and find games. Because there's nothing more boring than to just do more of the same types of noun work. Just adding more sentences and making the student identify nouns. That's just boring. And so if a kid is struggling with a concept, give multiple ways and interactions with those concepts. That's why this is all in the back of the book. And so there'll be, you know,
can thicken the course up as you need to.
Yes, but I'm not making every kid do 4 pages of underlining nouns.
Right.
So, not every kid is going to need it, but there's a lot of very good games in the back that's going to help enforce that. Spelling. Spelling's a tough one. I didn't even really want to include spelling because, again, kids are all over the board with ability. And I find that just addressing it within their writing, having them ask me how to spell something while they're writing, I start off where they ask how to spell a word and I might give them 1 letter at a time. Then I might chunk it up 2 to 3 letters at a time. And then by the time they're 5th, 6th grade, I'm giving them the whole word for them to write out. So that's how I find works best. I still have them work with the spelling within the program, within the language lessons. But when they need to know how to spell a word, I have them ask me, and that has been far better than hours of curriculum.
Right.
And there's also the downloads of the writing the words in the boxes. So if you want to do that in addition to what's in here. There's a variety of ways that people have scheduled the spelling. I assigned it to the last day so that if you had other spelling curriculum that you wanted to plug in, you could do that because everybody has their favorite and, it's just tough because kids, we've had moms say the spelling words are too hard. We've had moms say the spelling words are too easy.
Right.
Spelling is just one of those topics.
But there is spelling incorporated into it.
Yes.
And the lists are age appropriate.
Yes.
Skill appropriate.
Yes.
And it is enough of a spelling curriculum. Mm-hmm. They don't need to supplement.
Yep. I don't supplement with my own kids. And I have one that spelling comes really easy. And I have one that spelling does not. Yeah. And they're both doing, they're both progressing. And the last thing is the grammar study sheets that are in the back. When they get to maybe 4th grade, they're alphabetical, but there's a thing in the beginning.
And you let them use that as they go through the course.
I do. I require my kids to use these because when they'll come to me and say, "Mom, I don't remember what a helping verb is," and so I tell them, go to your grammar study sheets and look them up.
Well, in a way, that's kind of the right brain philosophy too. Is that helping verb, and I look at it, and my brain takes a snapshot of.
Yes. And that's also, again, you told me time, you brought up time management. How do I do time management? Well, that's part of it. I'm not going to do their work for them.
Yeah.
I'm going to be there to do the important things. You have to do the important things. I can never say her name right.
Apollonia.
Yeah. Sanchez. She says she can't see anything.
I'm not sure.
Can everybody else see the video? Anyway, I just think it's important for them to do their part. But, I will do mine. It's not an excuse for me to not read their work, not give them feedback. I will have time for that if I'm not doing their work for them.
Yeah.
So I think having those grammar study sheets, and I even let them look them up in the review. Okay. Most of them can see, so we're good.
Moving on to so Writing Strands is a series, and there's an overlap because Writing Strands it's skill based, but would typically start in 5th grade. So some parents do both. Mm-hmm. They use both, or where do you go when you finish the series? Just speak to that quickly.
Okay, some people choose to do both. I personally do not, but other people who I highly respect do. And it's really a matter of choice of what you want to do. Writing Strands has a completely different approach. It doesn't teach specifically your grammar concepts. It has all of those concepts in the teaching companion, and then you apply them to your students' work. Mm-hmm. And so you basically teach as you go. So if they are, say, not using adverbs properly, then you can address the use of adverbs. And there's a guidance in the teaching companion and how, that shows what an adverb is and that sort of thing. It deals a lot with creative writing and the writing process, just kind of eking out the writing process. So if you want them writing more, then you could do both, but it's certainly not required. If you choose to go from language lessons into Writing Strands, then I highly suggest you take the placement test, because 2 kids that have gone through all the language lesson series, they're individuals, and you're going into a program that's completely different, and so you want to treat it as a separate curriculum with its own placement test. And so that's what I would recommend, is you just have your kid take the placement test. That's what I personally do with my own children. Now, if you're going to use it alongside language lessons, then you're just going to start at beginnings 1.
Right.
That's what I would suggest doing.
In 5th grade.
In 5th grade, you would do beginnings 1.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well.
Or 6th grade. You could start beginnings at 6th grade too if you wanted. Beginnings 1.
Okay. Okay. Well, it's been an hour. And anybody that has a question, feel free to post. We'll try to go back in and answer questions. And if you're in the app, please post in community any questions that you may have, and it can be answered by us or the coaches. Facebook, if you post on this video, we're happy to go back through and do it. So
tonight or tomorrow.
Yeah.
Probably be a combination of both. We'll check it out tonight, and we'll check it out tomorrow.
Yeah. This was our date night. So this is what a date night has looked like actually for the last 2 years, because you've been writing 6 language books, over 2,400 pages of language. So we pretty much this was kind of the way it was. So we're happy that we're past this. So.
Yeah,
okay.
So I have to get the teaching companion written now, but I've taken just a little bit of a break. I'm going into it at a little slower of a pace than the breakneck speed that we've had.
Yeah. Well, we want to encourage, if you're new to homeschooling, both of us, over 20 plus years of homeschooling experience, 9 kids, graduated 5. We've helped thousands of families, but we just want to encourage you. Like, I think one of the biggest things, the biggest blessings that came out of the last season with COVID was that families are going to consider homeschooling. And it's not easy the first year. And there are seasons that are better than others. Yes. But we can say the big picture, what a blessing it is in the big picture to see when your kids start serving the Lord. When you launch them, and sometimes launch can be a little messy. It can be a little scary. But when they survive the fall and, out of the tree, when you kick them out of the nest and they do their whole tumble down, but when they catch flight, it's just absolutely beautiful. And so we just want to encourage you. And anything we can do as a company, we're trying to support and encourage. And if there are videos that would be helpful to you, I want to do some classroom management, organization tips. I want to bring in some of the coaches. I want to do your classroom, the way you set up the schoolroom again, scoring stations, some of those things that we do to save some time.
Right.
We're going to do that as well over the summer here. So.
Sounds good.
Good. All right, guys. Well, God bless you. Hopefully this was helpful. I know we kind of had to wrap it up closer towards the end to finish it, but any questions, be sure to post. We're happy to do that. And, man, we will see you tomorrow. I will see you tomorrow at Teaching Tips. And we're going to be talking about focus, the importance of focus. And, of course, with everything I do at Teaching Tips, I'm going to say we get what we lead, and it starts with us. And so we'll talk more about it tomorrow. God bless you guys. Have a good one. Okay.
Good night.
Night.